My name is Doruk Tuncel, and I'm a doctoral researcher at Siemens, Germany. I'm pursuing a PhD degree at the Johannes Kepler University, Linz, Austria. My topic today is supporting agile transformation, and my research focuses on proposing a scientifically founded agile assessment model. I'll give you an idea about my motivation, talk about the existing approaches, share the research questions on the basis of our methodology, and talk about some of the challenges and give you an outlook about my research now. Some of you may know the Kinevin framework from Dave Snowden. For those who are not familiar, I just put a reference down below. Kinevin framework talks about context and proposing contextually appropriate solutions or having appropriate strategies for changing contexts, because old solutions may not function in a new domain, and best practices which we know as best may not be the best for certain new domains, so to say. And when we apply this thinking to the agile domain, yes, Agile is a well-known methodology, maybe over the past 20 years, well studied, but the organizational context changed drastically and quickly. And bringing in Agile assessment models may be helpful because organizations need to identify their current state with respect to Agile, but these rigid assessment models do not, unfortunately, help capturing the reality of an agile organization or organizations with respect to their agility. And we identified certain aspects that could be of relevance and of importance for the organizations when we are assessing their agile reality, so to say, and we establish our goal as bringing in an agile assessment model which enables contextually appropriate assessments, which is also flexible and lightweight, so that this becomes possible. We have published a paper back in last year on the SEA conference. There we conducted a comparative study and established certain comparison and selection criteria and came to certain conclusions with respect to the existing models. And we try to learn from those agile assessment models and then put some additional value on the learning outcomes, so to say, and then try to give a structure to our model, which is we are doing right now. For the problem formulation, we established this comparative study / literature review, and there our focuses were which aspects we can learn, how people do this, how the existing models evaluate, assess. And in this current phase where we are right now, we are conducting expert interviews, trying to bring in a structure for the assessment model, and then for the next step we are planning to conduct case studies so that we can actually validate those structural components in these case studies for different organizational contexts, so that we can understand if the established structure is actually useful for any organization at all. And there we hope to also find out whether we can propose an improvement path for those organizations, because the idea is not to benchmark different organizations. The idea is find out potential improvement areas and propose them with a solution idea so that they can improve depending on their targets, for example. These are some of the things that we consider as part of our research questions. And then the methodology is followed as an action design research, where we try to iterate over the design artifact by means of the evaluation and intervention steps, given the advantages of the industrial setup of this PhD program. Of course, as like any other research, we also have certain challenges, and there here I would like to mention some of those. Mainly the integration versus differentiation is that agile methodology has humans in the center. It's not only a software development process, it's also about how you. It's that's why people refer to it as a mindset, because it considers the importance of people in the software development process and also product delivery process. And there, when it's about people, we have to consider things like psychological safety, personal growth, human communication, etc. And these require um, integrating different schools of thoughts and finding kind of a way to structure these different schools of thoughts, or harmonize these different disciplines in a coherent way. Of course, there is the aspect about the business needs. We want this model to serve different organizational contexts, and also would be valuable for business for their identifying improvement, increasing efficiency, etc. We don't want this model to be agile practice oriented, because practices may change depending on your context. One practice may be valuable for certain areas, which can be discarded for different areas. We want to establish this model based on values and agile principles. There, we want to have an eye on these soft factors, so to say, as I mentioned, human related properties would be included, and the methodology and orchestrating these methodology areas, different steps of the methodology, is also a challenge from our perspective. And of course, for every similar to every model, establishing consistent definitions for these assessment areas, and also having the leveling structure is as well a challenge. What we want to do is to reach these contributions in the end. We want to further validate our structural components in the model, and then by means of the case study, we want to establish this model, which ideally will be lightweight, not specific to certain agile frameworks, and will be enabling contextually appropriate assessments in the end. We want to highlight the gap between academia and industry, and we think this will be an opportunity to serve this need. Thank you very much, and I hope I can now answer your questions. Thank you.
Okay, and welcome to the live session with Durk. While you're preparing your questions, I will start asking a few my own questions. I wonder about this because it's interesting work. I guess you know how have come done more on this research. How far have you come?
So far, it's almost halfway through the research. We've been since the submission of this paper, we've been proposing a structural component of this model for this XP 2021, which I will be presenting in the next month, I guess. So yeah, in short words, we are almost halfway through this research.
And what have you learned? What is the key takeaway so far since you're
Uh,
halfway?
yeah, the key takeaway is that I think people perceive agile very differently,
Ah,
and main thing is that as people are skeptical towards developing maturity slash assessment models towards agile, because they have the feeling that it should not be evaluated that way for some
okay,
reason. But I'm trying to reflect this aspect of continuous improvement within the leveling structure of the model,
okay.
where so the main learning outcome is that this won't be easy, but yeah, it's learning progress for myself as well.
Okay. So how do you convince people then to actually, take part in this research
uh,
if they are resisting?
so the main idea is not to benchmark organizations or organizational units, as I mentioned in this talk. The idea is about continuous improvement, and therefore I just want to establish a model to help them understand the
Okay,
current state, and then help them reach some improvement targets based on their own organizational contexts. So
yeah,
that's the motivation.
yeah. That makes sense. That my own experience support that way of thinking. Good.
Mhm.
We have a question from Tor. What are your planned research activities going forward?
So the next step would be this validation of the structural components by further expert interviews or perhaps with a case study. Because in order to have this relevance, suitability, completeness aspects within the model, the next step would be having further validation within different organizations. As I mentioned, this is an industrial PhD setup. So this allows me to have different connections within different organizations. And the company I'm associated with is a large organization with different business units within different industries. So this allows me to have different viewpoints on the topic.
Hmm.
Yeah, that would be the concrete next step we are planning right now.
Okay, good.
Mhm.
You mentioned many challenges at the end of your talk. Which
Yeah.
one do you think is the hardest to solve?
The yeah, this is rather philosophical, but within this 90 seconds, I will try to get into
Mhm.
this. The differentiation and integration of different disciplines, because as I mentioned in the talk again, agile is not a process model itself. It has different components within where people play an important role. This comes from the manifesto as well
Mm,
as one of the values or principles as well. And because of that, we want to understand the people aspects, which is totally distant domain for my discipline as computer scientist. And this is something I'm trying to understand. How can I reflect people related components within the model and not end up with a process model
mm,
by itself? So I think this is this but scientific research by definition is towards having depth in it. So it's more specialization, it's
mm,
more differentiation, but we need to integrate different disciplines in order to create a higher level of abstraction
mm.
and potentially higher value out of it. That's
Mm.
kind of a challenging aspect from my perspective.
Okay,
I
thank you.
hope I could answer the question. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough question. You answered very well. Thank you. I guess for those who want to ask more questions, just hang in the discussion room. Thank you.
Thank you very much.